At least 23 governors felt the wrath of youth protesters when the residents took to the streets, as they saw it, to demand accountability and good governance from the county bosses. Sought the protection of private guards and supporters wielding rungus. But this were dismissed and the messages got home. That is what we have on the front page of the Standard today. You can grab a copy for yourself. And of course, the issue of the Forward Foundation has become also a bigger one, coming from the president and putting Forward Foundation on the spot, but they've stoutly denied that they've been sponsoring this as well, as you can see it. Police, my hands are clean, and this is in light of what is happening currently with the bodies that are coming from the quarry. This is what Stano has picked up also, putting in the dailies as well. And it is always the same script, different cast, transfers and reorganization of a police force, as it were. And right now we have also the confession of the serial killer who is flying in the face of what he had indicated today. Mambo ni mengi, right? Matatu yamekuwa cancelled. As you can see it there, mambo ni mengi. And we want to talk about the cabinet because where Gen Z are really coming on right now is that they don't want the status quo. That the political formation in this country could change drastically. The tone and tenor of predicating our politics on tribalism, on ethnicity, that is a story of yesteryears right now, so to speak. And we've had also the governor of Nyeri calling on the president and saying the president should consider the 8 positions in the cabinet secretary, that should be a reserve for Mount Kenya. Is he listening to the ground?
Debal, the governor of Nyeri, is not from Mars, he's from Pluto. He has no idea what's going on in this country. He's just speaking for the deputy president. The deputy president, Debal, is living in a time frame that is not his. His discourse is not in his own time frame. He's still speaking like the district officer from Molo. Debal, that's about 30, 40 years ago. Debal, the entire political class of this country is going to go. The reason it's going to go is because there's a national popular revolution going on in this country. It is for us to decide whether it's going to be peaceful, constitutional, plural, and democratic. Mm-hmm. That's our job. But a section of the population that is the overwhelming population of this country, the overwhelming majority of the population of this country, mm-hmm. has just come to the end of history, a breaking point in which they've said no. And the political class doesn't understand it. Debal, the great Amilcar Cabral, probably one of the great theoreticians of the African Revolution, said that the people don't struggle for ideas or things in men's heads, but they struggle for material things, for a peaceful future, and for them to have stability for their families and their communities. This is why people struggle. And if you want to hear a byword about anything that happens in this country, is that we were told that the bottom-up approach is going to be a revolution, a conservative revolution from William Ruto. He touched the wires of the class struggle in this country and the ideological dissonance that we have. Debal, the way in which the political class was peddling tribalism to get into power has been demolished. It's no longer there. And the governor of Nyeri will find that out in 2027 when they throw him out. People are looking for material things. They're looking for processes that are going to help their lives. They're looking for their kids to get better education. And Debal, this is, when in a society, you know, there's a certain thing called as a nation species or a species nation. When the whole society coalesces around an idea, mm-hmm. it is very difficult to stop it. The great Victor Hugo said that no army can stop an idea whose time has come. Mm. And the ideas that we have today by this generation Z, Debal, is as old as Abraham Lincoln quip about the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shouldn't perish from the face of the earth. The question that we have to ask ourselves if the intelligentsia of this country is thinking, is what is it exactly that is going to happen to this country? And I want to quote something, Debal. It's something really that I just got the quote by Amilcar. It says, always remember that the people are not fighting for ideas, nor for what is in men's mind. The people fight and accept the sacrifices demanded by the struggle in order to gain material advantages, to live better in peace, and to benefit from progress and for the better future of their children. That's exactly what's going on in Kenya. People had tried this paradigm that the political class peddled. It has failed. Now, what we decide is going to happen to this country in the next few months is entirely upon the political class, the people of this country. I put it to you, Debal, that we need to do three things. The first thing that we need to do, if we are wary about what the people are saying, is to go to a general election, Debal. The last thing that anybody does is to go and ask the people, what is it that you want? That will stop these problems that we have in this country.
But isn't that the question that is being asked? Because it seems we're in a conundrum here.
We're not in a conundrum, Debal. It is very clear to me, at least, that the last barrier is to always go to the people and say, what say ye? What is your view? And how do we do it? You do it through an election. Now, if you want to put an end to this rebellion by the Gen Zs and this revolution that is unfolding, it is very important for us to go and ask the people, what government do you want and what is it that you want from the government? And unless that is done, this will continue to happen. Now, the president wants to form a government of national unity. That's just a stopgap, Debal. There is no national unity. How are you going to form a government of national unity when we don't have national unity? We have to have national unity to form a government of national unity. And there is no national unity. So what we need to do is for the president to understand that either he is going to win or it is the Gen Zs who are going to win. Debal, the government now is with the Gen Zs. They are summoning Raila Odinga to the AU. I retweeted that to Professor Kagwanja in his... They told the African Union, you're not going to elect Raila Odinga. They are summoning governors. The next thing they're going to go is ask for these governors to go and the MCS to go. They're going to ask for the National Assembly to be dissolved. And Debal, then what's going to happen? You see those fellows in the barracks, Debal? The ones who are sworn to defend the country, they'll bring their tanks here to Uhuru Highway. We don't want that. So what we need to do, Debal, is we need to get a process in this country in which we're going to ask the people, what is it that you want? Because this thing of trying to reform...
Yeah, but on what forum are we asking these questions, critical questions, what they do want? Because we are talking about what the people want. And this, it seems the government is trying hard to respond to some of these questions that are being raised by Gen Z. So they've put down some of the finance bill is down. The cabinet has been dismissed.
It's bigger than that.
I mean, there are changes which are happening slowly by slowly. And I think also the president was really quick off the mark. So if we say that they need to listen to the Gen Zs, what will be the prime solution? Because this is where we are actually caught up in a quagmire. As you know, a think tank, as I take you to be, if you were to give advice to the government, to President William Ruto right now, who is at loss to maybe know what to move forward with. The question of Ruto must go, will it fly at the end? Is that the prime solution? And if Ruto must go, then what? Do we have an alternative? These are very critical questions that everyone is raising. Yes. Because now if we say, oh, Ruto must go, then Ruto goes, then what?
Yes. Debal, we'll start with the first question you asked about Governor Kahiga demanding 8 seats for Central.
It's ridiculous.
Governor Kahiga is from Nyeri. It is about 2,361 square kilometers, which is 0.2 of Kenya's territory, about 1.8 of Kenya's population, of about just slightly less than 1 million. Now, while Gen Z has demonstrated that we can go beyond to the ethnic consciousness, the ethnic consciousness is not exactly gone or lost, especially among the adults and the grown-ups, who, as governor has demonstrated, have been ethnic jingoists. Now, the president is president for the entire nation. There is no room for village politics. I'm going to repeat that. And this constant demanding that almost half the cabinet goes to one region does not help, is completely nonsensical. We only elected one president, and it's going to be responsible for 55 million Kenyans. And I think that debate should actually stop, because it does not even make the Mount Kenya leadership look good. It makes them look extremely parochial and selfish, considering that only 2 communities have ruled this country for much of the last 60 years, actually all of it. And so unless you're from Rift Valley, perhaps, or you're from, again, Nyeri, perhaps you may not understand the sensitivities of other communities, about 45 of them, you see, when such kind of demands are made. The president has promised to make or to build a broad-based government, not a company of shareholders. And I think Kenyans, and the young Kenyans especially, that is also going to be very critical with regard not just about elite pacting, where you're going to bring and regurgitate old politicians.
Correct.
But fresh blood. Fresh blood does not mean they have to be 25 years old. It just means people who have innovation, people who are clear-minded. Now, the second part of the question was, there have been demands, and we also have to be honest with both our government, but also those who are demanding certain changes from the government.
Right. Before you go into the demands, if I may just cut you short a bit, to just ask on the question still of the CSs, since you on that bit. There are stories. We just read a story of Murkomen and people of Elgeyo Marakwet saying, oh, you know, he performed, he should be considered, you know, he forfeited his seat at the end of the day. And so there are actually, you know, talks in the public gallery that some of those legislators who forfeited their seats, they should actually be reconsidered.
Yeah, those again are the parochial politics that I think the president should not pay very attention, because right now the president will need to reconnect with the people, not with the politicians.
Absolutely. Not with the politicians.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well
now, on the second part, there are these calls, of course, by some Gen Zs about, you know, Ruto must go and stuff like that. Now, it's exciting, and when you're a politician on the other part of the divide, or you are a young person, it is a little bit of fantastical and inspiring, you know, to be able to push the envelope and push the limit. But also, let's be honest, you know, with ourselves. This president was elected to serve his term until 2027. Now, there are circumstances where a president can, you know, end their term prematurely and stuff like that. Now, constitutionally in Kenya right now, there are very few practical options of actually doing that, which means there's a likelihood that whether or not you like him, you're going to work with this president until 2027. So if that becomes now the ultimate objective, then it also leaves no room for negotiation. It's very maximalist, you know, kind of approach that does not even create a decent environment to talk to each other. And we have to look at what exactly were the interests of not just the Gen Z, but the Kenyans. They want a more competent and accountable government. They want a more balanced. They want to make sure the government is responding to their needs. They want, you know, their taxes not to be overburdened by the taxes where they don't know where it's going. They want an end to corruption. We've discussed corruption here as a national security threat. Now you can see what we are talking about. It's a national security threat in so many ways. If State House moves in this direction, for instance, you know, can we be able to see about the bare minimums, both those of us who, let's say, demanding those things from the government, and the kind of sacrifice the government is willing to make? Now, of course, I think the elephant in the room that those on the street sometimes they have not seen happen is perhaps holding the people to account, number one, for corruption, because they have not seen any move towards that. Number two, especially those people who may have been involved in extrajudicial killings and disappearances, and victims are still mourning, or rather they're still missing, or the families are still mourning the death of their loved ones. Some who were seen actually shooting at people. And so they would like that to be done. However, we have to be reasonable to realize that the president has a constitutional mandate. Because think about the alternative. If today he were to resign, of course, you can still end up with the vice president anyway. Well, if that is what Kenyans want, then that's another question. Of course, there's going to have to be an election after that. Is this going to be a country in crisis until 2027? Or whenever the next election is actually supposed to be held, it's going to be called. And so, what are the realistic minimums that we can be able to achieve? And so the movements among Gen Z, and it's unfortunate, very unfortunate, that you've had goons, some who are hired by politicians, but others taking advantage of it, to cause the kind of damage, because it's paralyzing the economy and it's going to affect everybody. It's already affecting everybody. So some sanity, and this brinkmanship needs to end. We need to move to the center, but there has to be communication from both ends with regard to the willingness to move to that center. Certain actions being undertaken and expanded, but also organizing demonstrations and protests, for instance, in a way that can actually advance the agenda, because right now, when this thing began, Kenya was an inspiration to the rest of the world. Now, increasingly, with the emergence of violence, what is happening is that we may not want to go down that path. Because remember, we targeted 340 or 60 billion shillings. Chances are the damage to the economy and everything else in the months to come probably is going to far exceed what we're actually supposed to raise to start with. And so is that the kind of future we actually want? Or do we need now to sit down and say, well, now where do we go from here? Because this stalemate is not sustainable.
Right. The stalemate is not sustainable. When you talk about the political class, could that be the problem? Because it seems the political class is what Gen Zs don't want to see in front of their faces anymore. And they are the critical figures who are trying to make sure that they steer this particular ship back to its course to sail smoothly as it has as a country. But I wanted just to begin from there. When we see Right Honorable Raila Odinga calling for this national dialogue to have conversation, this is what is really, iking the Gen Zs.
I think few of the current generations will recall the root cause of what we're going through today. The magical date is March 18, 2002, when Daniel Moi appointed all the figures you see now monopolizing our politics, whether from William Ruto, Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, all of them were elevated as chair or secretary general by Kanu at that particular time, 202. From there, it is the differences that have shaped our politics. This old order is dead.
Correct.
With the new protest, this old order is dead. Kenya is going through the birth pangs of a new moral order.
Correct.
That must exclude all this. And I think there's no letting go until this order is gone. And therefore, you can see the Kenya Kwanza coalition is no longer at ease and cannot hold. The center can no longer hold. Why? Because it was a reward kind of a government. You voted me in, you fought for my election, you contributed a huge amount of money for me to be elected, and so on. And this is your payback. The payback time is over. Now it is about examining the moral basis or the value base of each leader in Kenya. And that's the trying time is going to come when choosing the cabinet. I know there's going to be pushback, as you've seen in Elgeyo Marakwet. You've begun to see it in Mount Kenya, the push. Because these are the two blocks that basically create the remnants of the old order. And even in the ground, the vibe is that, we don't want this old order. We want a clean slate. And therefore, Ruto's future does not depend on the dying order. If he wants to craft a future, he has to craft it alongside this new crusade for a new moral order in the country. And the crusade for the new moral order basically is not a call for anarchy chaos and disintegration of the nation,
correct,
as Khaninja has said.
Yeah.
I think the crusaders of the new moral order will also have to play by the rules, meaning within the constitution. And there are only 4 ways in which you can deal with Ruto as a person. I know there is a lot of this Ruto must go. It's okay as a chant, I think. It's okay as a campaign
as
chant.
As a slogan.
As a slogan. But in terms of its execution, you have to wait either for the hand of God to do his role. You can possibly push Ruto to the point that he feels that he's so tired he has to resign. That's a legitimate political thing. He resigns voluntarily. 3, you can get Parliament to impeach him.
Yes.
But the most prudent course is to wait Ruto out until August 10, 2027, when we go to the ballot and vote the next executive.
Yes.
There is chance that Ruto, like Kibaki, will bounce back. But as a new face. If he happened to chaperone this new transition that we're going through, this turbulent phase, excellently. No, let's give it that way, that it is possible. But any move that pushes Ruto out of power in the interim is going to throw the country into unknown uncertainty. And therefore, we need basically to take this kind of revolutionary moment seriously, that we can tip, because we are on a tipping point.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything.
Professor Macharia.
I needed to say something about what the government need to do now, urgently.
Right, we'll come to it. Let's hear from Professor Macharia.
Yeah. Yes, we are living in interesting times. And for historians, it's good to be watching and say, yeah, I saw it. I mean, there's nothing happening that is new. We saw it coming, and we said so. Now, there's a question cropping up. Is Ruto a hostage to some forces? And could that condition of being hostage be the reason he cannot announce a cabinet? Okay? There are those who are there, and they, in fact, when they were dismissed, some of them said, remember we? You know, some of them said, remember.
We will spill the beans.
Yeah. Could he be hostage to some forces? If he is, then we are in trouble. Second, these young people, I think they've made it very clear that they want to operate within the Constitution. My analysis and study and interaction with a few of them is that they want to remain within. And if you listen to them, they are saying it is the government which is behaving unconstitutionally, which is not being accountable. They are driven by the spirit of the national anthem, the Kiswahili version particularly. And when you listen, in fact, some churches have adopted it, because they use, last Sunday, they were singing the national anthem at the beginning of the service in various churches as part of that moral support. So the overthrow of the government in a manner that's not constitutional, I don't think is in the agenda of the original Gen Zs. There may be some people who have cropped in, and the political class is very scared, because they should have been the one driving this thing. They are not. They have been sidelined, and they are worried. How do they get into the picture? So some of them could be harboring some peculiar ways of changing. There is also a growing narrative of why Ruto should not be pushed out. Because if you push out Ruto, and Kawanja has alluded to it, who's going to be there? You see, Gachagua, no, we let Ruto stay. There's that which is being built up as a political strategy and all those things. Then you look at it, there's a general question that has been coming up in different ways. Question of equity. Whether it's regional or human. There is a difference between human equity and regional equity. How is it to be addressed? And Gen Zs have come up with a good way, say we don't care about all those things, we just want things to be done right. And if they are done right, then we have a what? A possible way out. It has not been figured out exactly what doing right is, the method of doing that. Now, is there some way? Possibly. And I think we've suggested some. People want to see action in a positive way. They don't want a revolution. In fact, it's been said there was a mistake when they Ruto called the military into the streets.
Very bad mistake.
That was a terrible mistake. And he should start by saying the military are no longer going to be on the streets. And I don't think the military want to be in the streets.
They don't want it.
These are good people. We know them. They are, they are good people. They don't want to be on the streets. That's not their place. So call them back and let's create an atmosphere. By having the military is also saying that the police are totally incompetent and should not be there because this is a police work. So one of the first things he might want to do is have a cabinet that is not simply what people are demanding, but that's credible. If you have somebody, a minister of a particular ministry, who is not necessarily a technician, I hear people calling for technicians instead of competent people. The Ministry of Health does not have to have a doctor at the top.
Yep.
It needs to have somebody with a good head on
A leader.
his or her shoulder.
A leader.
A shoulder. Some good policy maker, but who might have some technical knowledge. They think one of the names being bandied around, I don't know how serious it is. You know Mase Mwangangi? Remember?
Let's not mention names.
No. Let's be no. What I'm saying.
We would allow name droppings.
What I'm saying. People who can inspire confidence, one way or the other. You say that one, they say yes. You say that one, they say umerudia huyo tena. People whose names inspire fear.
All right.
Instead of confidence.
All right, we need to wind up. I think
let me just add one point. All we're saying, he needs to build a cabinet of people of integrity, and he should not include political parties because this is what the Gen Zs are opposed to. He should get men and women of goodwill, and it should be the face of Kenya. It should just not be Nyambura and Kipketich, because this is what he was doing. And it seems that Mr. Ruto does not do anything without being pushed. Every time he says something, he says, okay, I concede. You think he's in a boxing match. People need to understand what's happening in this country and then think about how to fix it.
All right. Think about how to fix it. We just want to follow up and just update you as well on what has been happening today regarding the Republican convention meeting and also that attempt on President Donald Trump. Then we shall just get our closing remarks from our panelists as well. Let's just listen in to what they had to say with the endorsement that came from there.
Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period. To my fellow Republicans, we must not only be a unified party, we must also expand our party. We are so much better when we are bigger. We are stronger when we welcome people into our party who have different backgrounds and experiences. And right now, we need to be strong to save America. This is a defining moment, not only for our party, but for our country. Our fellow Americans are fearful right now. Families are suffering from inflation and wages that don't keep up with prices. Young people are being indoctrinated to think our country is racist and evil. The Jewish community is facing an obscene rise in anti-Semitism. Too many minorities are trapped in communities devastated by crime.
Donald Trump has been demonized. He's been sued. He's been prosecuted, and he nearly lost his life. We cannot let him down, and we cannot let America down. It is the values of this Republican Party that reflect our nation's founding principles. We believe schools should educate, not indoctrinate. We stand for parents' rights, including universal school choice. We support law and order, not rioting and disorder. We seek a strong, focused United States military, not one distracted by a social agenda. We reject entrenched political class, and we demand term limits for members of Congress. We stand for fiscal sanity, for low taxes, and for reduced debt. We seek to reclaim the constitutional government as envisioned by our founding fathers by bringing the administrative state to heel once and for all.
Take a look at what happened.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
Wait.
There, the US elections, as you can see, that was an attempt on Donald Trump, and also the bites there from some of the Republicans endorsing Donald Trump. Hashi, briefly on this.
Donald Trump is going to wipe the Democratic Party out of American politics. There's no question about that. He's probably going to take 2/3 of the Congress as well. But the ball, you know, that lady who was endorsing him was the one who was in Israel signing the bombs in the airplane to be dropped in Gaza. And I think that when Trump comes in, I think the war in Ukraine is going to stop. He's going to have a détente with Russia. He's also going to grab Netanyahu by the neck and tell him to stop bombing those poor people in Gaza. But for inside the American constituency, inside the United States, for African Americans, minorities, people who are under the social network, Trump is going to be bad for them. And I think that the Democratic Party has made a huge mistake by bringing back Biden.
Right. What about NATO ally status? Is it going to stand? Let's hear from Dr. Kaneje.
Fundamentally, some things may not exactly change if they're not dependent on a specific administration. If that's the position of the U.S. Government, then some of it may stay on. It's just that the extent of engagement, of course, is one that may differ. And as my colleague has mentioned, a number of things have conspired to have Democrats literally vote themselves out of power, and it's unfortunate. Perhaps as a parting comment internally, and this is speaking to the appointing authority, and for those who run KPLC, they've adopted this extremely primitive habit of cutting trees and turning beautiful neighborhoods into ugly concrete jungles. You have trees that are 100 years old. Someone arguing that it was built too close to the power. Now, which one came first? And I think they should be reined in because the president is a champion of the climate agenda, and what we're doing to Nairobi is extremely shameful, and people at KPLC should actually be fired.
Yeah, monumental figures, right? Or trees 100 years plus. Even you should have the conscience of feeling something in you when you're axing it, cutting it down. All right, Peter Kagwanja,
yes,
I think your closing remarks.
I think they have handed a victory to Trump in a very easy way, because the easiest way to create a leader under these circumstances is to create a victim, and Trump has now moved from a villain to a victim, particularly without the recent attempted assassination. And therefore, I would go almost with what Hashi is saying, that we are going to witness a landslide victory for the Republicans. But even then, the question is, where does that leave Kenya? And Trump is not one of those who adore NATO. So it was a medal.
He'll break it up.
It's a medal we may never wear in public.
Mazaria.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to see Trump. He wants to continue talking, even when he's bleeding. Eh?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But it's not the first time it has happened like that. Eh?
Yep.
The same thing happened in 1912. Theodore Roosevelt was also a candidate, and he was shot at, and he refused to go until he finishes his speech.
Real politician.
Yeah, you know, and he sees himself as some sort of a reincarnation of Roosevelt in some way. So, because he's winning, and he was winning even before he was shot. You know, there was no question about, because Biden is losing about so many mistakes.
He's finished.
He does not like NATO very much. So it's not good to be associated with NATO. Anything to do with Biden, he doesn't want. So then this was
remarkable.
Was thing. But last time he was president, he seemed to get along very well with Uhuru Kenyatta. They seem to get along very well.
Very well.
Or somewhere else. Maybe if Ruto reorganizes himself, he might also get a chance to get along with the guy.
I thought as well he was getting famously with Benjamin Netanyahu as well. Bibi.
Yeah, so he has a lot of influence over him.
He's got a lot of influence over him. Right, gentlemen, thank you very much. I really appreciate your insight this morning.
Thank you,
on Global Today. And we hope also that the government is listening to some of the sentiments that you've put across, silent issues, silent solutions as well, that they should consider that this is a new political order that we are living in this epoch of time that has never been experienced in the country. We are in a new dispensation as far as the paradigm shift is concerned. Ethnicity, tribalism, that will not hold water anymore. So it is not those political formations that will bring any change at the end of the day. It's the new moral order where accountability and transparency will end the moral decadence in this country. And we support and we rally along what is happening in this country. And we pray that it may not take a tangent that is taking of violence, but we might continue to be a peaceful protest. Thank you very much for your valued company. You've been watching Global Today here on Morning Prime. News Diary is up next.